The last session of this wonderful workshop that we had these past 2 days. I think we had very interesting talks, stellar speakers on very diverse topics. And as we did yesterday, today we'll have a panel discussion with all the speakers. And we're also joined by Professor Eric Shing, who's the president of MBZUAI. And maybe, Eric, if you want to say just a few words on the university and the efforts, and then we can start the...
Okay, you can hear me? Great, thank you. Yeah, honestly, I wasn't prepared to give a speech. Then Aaron just told me to maybe offer some information about the university and also about our visions and plans, here, in the space of, AI for bio or drug discovery or healthcare in general. So let me just improvise something because I wasn't prepared for that. First of all, I want to welcome all of you, to come join this event. I'm very thankful that Aaron and Lausanne is able to contribute, a lot of their bandwidth and effort and their resource to pull you all to here and to together explore this very nice space of drug discovery. As you know, MBZUAI is a just barely 3-year-old organization, but we really want to take this opportunity to get things done right in terms of incubating a new organization for higher education and also for advanced research. And I have some very simple kind of guideline. For example, I started from getting the top people to work with me. And Aaron is one of these examples. He was a long-term friend of, we know each other for like 30 years, right? So back to the days of graduate school, we already know each other and admire each other. And that's kind of the kind of reference point that you can see that we are very actively, bringing in, top researchers, academics, and academic leaders and also operational leaders, to join the school to, provide, a stage, for students and faculty to get their work done. Now, the university has the following vision, right? So we want to really make Abu Dhabi and the UAE, a place in the future known for, top-level R&D, innovation, knowledge creation, and also tech transfer. That's actually the first goal that I set forth for the university, to really, put this country and this region to the map of world-level innovation in AI. Again, it is in AI, but I want to emphasize that our definition of AI is a very broad one. It is not just algorithm and applied mathematics and software engineering. It is AI / everything that touch upon AI, such as AI for science. We know that AI has now become a major tool to do a lot of, important, data-driven research, in all scientific disciplines. So that's basically, the first goal for the university, to build the capacity and also the excellence in this region. And then, of course, with such an instrument, we can promote talent, incubation and training, and also maybe enablement. Not only the talents in here, but also talents all over the world to come join here, to work here, to study here, and then to live here down the road. Again, it's another dimension of culture and societal building that kind of put UAE to the map of world-level innovation and research. And thirdly, we actually also have a strong interest to connect R&D and basic research to entrepreneurship, to business development and to also economic prosperity. That's why the university is in very active exploration with stakeholders here and globally to build incubators, industrial parks, and joint labs and so forth to really enable a pipeline of technological transfer from university to business sector, and also people from the university to business sector. so that they can start enabling the change, or maybe making the change happening in the broader sectors. So that's kind of the three pillars of the university: R&D and the talent training, and also business development. So in that context, we create this, well, on there we see the logo of MBZ Executive Program. That's one of our effort to contribute to the community. And some of you, I think Aaron was one of them as a speaker in that program, which is to really kind of seed the idea and also broadcast the gossip to stakeholders, to leaders in the region, so that they become aware about the opportunity in AI, and then also use the knowledge of AI to help optimizing their decision making. Then on the other hand, we also built a program known as the AI Quorum, of which this workshop is part of, to really create how should I say this to catalyze this starting points of new ideas and the new projects to be incubated and to be catalyzed with domain experts from the world. In the past, we have already like this 2 or 3 day long workshops among a wide spectrum of topics, such as in fundamental machine learning algorithm and theory, such as distributed machine learning, federative machine learning, causality, and so on and so forth. And then we also are looking into the intersection of AI with biology, AI with policy, and so on. And the goal is to bring people like yourself, to sit together and discuss science and also present latest results in an environment that is free of the buzz and the noise and the interference, as you often see in major conferences where thousands of people jammed in a room and presenting posters to the point that you just get overloaded with information. Here, we want to use. There was an echo somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is better now. Yeah, we want to make sure that we don't rush, to tick the boxes and finish a program for the sake of finishing it. We want to kind of sit down and be comfortable, with a natural cadence to allow the scientific ideas, the business ideas to flow rather freely and adequately across people to have in-depth discussions. That's why I see, Aaron was doing a great job, in kind of interleaving both technical presentations with like discussion sessions and so forth, which I thought is a great idea. And in the future, we're going to do this regularly every year to really allow the researchers and innovators to find a alternative opportunity and stage, to do their business and also to exchange ideas, in addition to going to like NeurIPS, SAML, and other top conferences where, you have the risk of overloading your brain and the sensors with too much information. Right? So with that, I think, again, I want to reiterate what my warmest possible welcome, for all of you to come to our campus. I hope you enjoyed the past 2 days already. We want to take also on your ideas and suggestions so that we can make our program and our university a better place, to do research and academic exchange in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eric. And maybe to kick us off, I'll start with actually a question to Alex, but then I'd like maybe a comment from each of you, because you had talked on diverse topics. So I think very impressive what you've achieved and shown. And I'd be interested if you can pinpoint on which of the data sets and data types that you've shown has been most instrumental and valuable for creating eventually your 30 therapeutic programs. And then maybe a general question to each of you is, how do you see in the problems that you're working on, where would we see the next leap coming from, and what is missing? Is it data, and if so, what? Is it methodologies on existing data, or is it anything else like trying to convince policymakers to implement things that we know already work? Or so interested in how do we take the field of AI in medicine forward to the next big leap in the coming years?
Sure. Thank you. Deeply privileged to be here, and thank you for attending my talk. So just to answer the question, which data type is the most valuable for target discovery? That's a crazy important question, because I've previously published on life data economics, and different data types bring different value for different purposes. So for the purposes of target discovery, when you are looking for a moderately novel target for a chronic disease, I think that the most important data type, if I were to single just one out, that would be expression, tissue-specific expression data from longitudinal data sets. So that would be the many omics repositories like Geo, TCGA, etc., Aerospace, and all of that integrated, cleaned up, and you have multiple global models trained on those data types. So for target discovery, I think that was key. In some cases, you do need to have phenotypic data, and for more confidence, you do need to have massive amounts of literature data that also provides you with additional pockets of evidence to be able to put a lot of money on a specific target, because at the end of the day, you have to choose one. And for target discovery, that's the most valuable data type. If you are looking for, later we prosecuted with our own chemistry, and if I were to single out one data type, we did not touch that particular one, but if we were to go after just one data type, I would take drug bank, linked to a few other chemical, to the entire PopChem. So PopChem would be a very good place to start.
In terms of prioritizing genetic variants for disease outcomes or population health more widely, my answer is quite a simple one. Of what we need is just more large-scale prospective biobanks. At the minute, there's, I think, a lot of amazing biobanks, but mostly in Caucasian populations. We just desperately need more large-scale longitudinal biobanks in much more diverse populations across the world. And I think there's a real opportunity here too, here in Abu Dhabi then. So I believe there's an amazing sequencing program, and if there's an opportunity then to turn that into a prospective biobank, that would be an incredible resource for the world and really revolutionize what we can do in terms of genomic discovery and also in terms of wider population health research.
Great, yeah. So this we are hoping to begin to set up here actually.
Yeah, I can speak from the drug development side again, and there is a painful trend in drug development in which it's cheap to generate data from very early stages of the clinical development pipeline, but as you get to more and more advanced stages, to preclinical studies in animals and then to clinical studies, the data becomes much rare and more expensive to generate. And so we have a very hard time attacking the main bottlenecks in the development pipeline. And what we would ideally need is to be able to have systems that mimic the preclinical studies as accurately as possible, using organoids and systems on a chip and data from clinical studies. And we also need to build bridges that would allow us to take the insights that we generate from the earlier stages of the clinical development pipeline, the simplest in vitro systems, and then to transfer them or to fine-tune them or to transfer the knowledge in a principled way to the more advanced stages in which most drug development efforts fail. Because we just don't have enough data that would allow us to predict what's going to work as accurately as we would like.
So I'll talk about two aspects. One, on the data side, it's related to what Omer was saying, just releasing clinical trial data, because the pharma companies have this amazing patient-level clinical trial data that is very much siloed. There's no chance to access it. And I have no idea how to break this barrier because it's regulatory and business and there's a lot of money involved. But if there were some way where researchers could gain access to a detailed clinical trial data across multiple companies, that would have been amazing. From the method side, so it's completely different. But this is
but by the way, on that, do you think that so even the summary data is not collected in an organized way, right?
Right.
And how much do you think we could get away, or we could advance just even with the summary statistics of these data sets?
I think not much. I mean, it would be useful. It would be a nice PhD. But I don't think that would bring a breakthrough. But if we had all the data from all the clinical trials, I think that would enable great things. And I don't even see a pathway towards that. I don't see it happening, but I would like to see it. And now switching to my AI methods hat, so you're asking which method. So I think there was this great talk at NeurIPS this year about interaction-centric AI. So we're seeing more and more these AI applications as ChatGPT, what Noah was presenting for helping clinicians, what Shai Shanor is talking about helping computational biologists. We're using these AI methods to help humans, but we're training them as some supervised method or unsupervised method. We're not building them. Oh, this is weird. You need to cool down? No?
This is creating some feedback.
Who? Okay. Now it's okay. Yeah. Maybe we need to talk slowly and not fill the buffer and then yeah, I'll relax. So I'll just say, because these tools are being used by humans, we should develop them with that in mind in the first place. And that really changes your perspective. And ChatGPT is really very obvious how they did that, and it changed the entire world by adding a simple interaction level using this reinforcement learning from humans. And I think developing models with the interaction first in mind is the way we should be going across many of these problems.
So I think I'll reiterate the data point because I completely agree with everything. It's methodology and regulation and adoption, but I think that, so again, for the type of things that we do, which is very practical, clinical applications and very specific type of data, which is clinical data. So for that point of view, I think that our largest gap is the lack of data. We have a lot of data, we have very good clinical data, but still we see a very specific proportion of what goes on in a patient's lives. The lab test that we see is like just recording something at a specific moment and then maybe recording it a year or 2 years later. So it goes with managing diabetes. So we have an HbA1c level once every few months in the good case, but continuous glucose monitoring will allow us to adjust the diabetes treatment much more accurately compared to the very narrow window that we currently have into the patients' lives. And that's just for things like labs. If we look at everything kind of like you do, what the patient eats and how he or she sleeps and what they do and the level of physical activity and the continuous monitoring of every vital sign, I'm sure that with really simple technology and simple methodology that we currently have, we can do a huge leap in the efficiency of the treatment that we're currently giving with just the drugs that we currently have. So for me, that's the first thing, and that I will choose to have much better insight regarding the accurate data of each individual in a holistic manner. And then everything that I think these guys are doing to invent the next drug and the next leap of efficiency.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the crowd?
If I may take this opportunity,
Please.
Speak about my own observation and experiences in working in this sector. that would be kind of adding on what I've been said so far, right? Data siloedness and identifying where the best data is one issue. But there are, in my opinion, even some broader issues. That is the elephant in the room, that we don't really see the whole picture. I've been working on CompBio for a long time, and then also I worked on deep learning, machine learning, and statistics for a long time. And also my wife worked in the medical school. We kind of experienced all the cultural clash in these different sectors. That to me is the most difficult thing, because the current very concept of medical practice and the medical administration and drug design and all that are based on a principle and a mindset that was a century old, right? And it was, for example, this very convention of FDA approval, that practice is actually built on hundreds of years of medical practice, that you need to develop one drug that is working for everyone. You need to design double-blind and other experiments to prove that no one is exposed to a slightest possible risk that will never happen, and so forth. That's the mindset which was built on a obsolete theory and also a obsolete economical model, and also a very old-fashioned kind of operational model. Now we are talking about overwhelming amount of personalized data that can be very easily collected, okay? And also we are talking about personalized healthcare and treatment. All this, in my opinion, seems to be going against those old school kind of enterprise level kind of a generic solution to disease and other problems. But the implication of that is that these two schools are clashing right now in such a big way that we are not helping each other. For example, you cannot really convince the FDA to revisit their drug approval policy and to allow, to accept the reality that not all drug or not a single drug is working for everyone. You should be okay with the fact that a drug is treating one person 100% and treating another person partially. You still need to kind of promote this. So, and also in terms of developing the solution, the treatment, what is the right kind of data and the methodology to use. ChatGPT, for example, is example, right? What is made for? It is again now intended for a conversation that is offering people some kind of sense of being paid attention to or answers being made. But on the other hand, it is alternative to a human being who can do the same, maybe not as fast. In the drug design space, in the biological space, there's a bigger opportunity to use this kind of a pre-trained model technology, because it is not an alternative, it is an irreversible thing. People cannot design drug in their brain, honestly, right? People rely on computers, to visualize or to infer the structure, to hypothesize the consequence, and also to simulate, all the possible scenarios in a way that is not a human brain would do. But then in that case, why we are trying to kind of translate the technology without a redesign, right? So I think these are the opportunities that the space of computational biology / AI, can best leverage to revisit the very pipeline of data collection and integration, to actually revisit every aspect about model design and implementation, to see, what are the new dimensions that one could explore, right? And also to even, look for a different way of dispatching the results. Do we need to, for example, follow a highly regulated and risk-avert kind of mechanism, to roll out something that is called a drug? Or there could be other kind of ways of promoting, healthy and more kind of productive, healthcare management, such as lifestyle management, right? Such as nutritional kind of improvements, and maybe without using the name drug or a procedure, there is a alternative way of deriving value out of it. So I see actually a very big space where almost every stone can be touched upon to enable a change. And this is actually where I want to promote our university's concept. We are now looking into the possibility of creating a new institute or organization, maybe call it a digital healthcare or digital public health and so forth, which is not falling into the old school mentality of having a medical school, having a department of medicine, then having some statistics department and CS department all operate on their silo, and then interact through a thin interface in the form of a data exchange and so forth. Maybe they should all be in the same roof, under the same roof, and also work together on a problem without really emphasizing too much on their own identity. Say, I'm a medical doctor, I have to do this, and I'm a computer scientist, I have to do that, and so on and so forth. So this is where I see more kind of a challenge and opportunity, for us to look into.
Yeah. If I could add to that, I very much relate to what you just said, and I'll say that in my opinion, and we've done a lot of work personally on this, I think nutritional changes and lifestyle changes have a major impact on, we're treating a disease like diabetes, which is now in 10% of the population. If you look 100 years ago, it was only present in 1% of the population. The genetics is the same. Obviously, we changed environmental factors, and I believe it's a lot because we changed lifestyle and diet. So we have all this industry now, and I think hundreds of billions of dollars in the US to treat a disease that with very simple means, I believe we can avoid for the majority of the population. But I think the issue, and maybe such efforts and institutes could help, major issue is that there's no money in that in terms of industry, because you can't patent dietary advice, you can't patent advice on lifestyle, even though those would have the biggest impact and big effect. So there's not a lot of money going to this. You can't, pharma companies are not interested, so there's not a lot of grant money. Therefore, I think the science is very poor in this area. And then also industry is much harder, and it's a much less regulated field, which means that if you look at the companies out there, there's a lot of noise, because there's a lot of there are a lot of companies that are just what's the word? A nice word. Trying to pick a nice word for it, but that are not deceptive. So I think there's a great need. I think that's an area where it's actually a low-hanging fruit to improve health with simple nutritional advice and lifestyle modifications instead of just drug design, which should be done, of course, in parallel. So I'd very much like to see much more effort in that space. We are also working in that, and I think all the data that we've been discussing and collecting, and wearables, of course, and all of those are looking at lifestyle and can suggest also AI-based modifications and actionables that could greatly improve health and avoid disease.
But even in the space of drug design, I'm actually very curious to learn about all your opinions. Right now, with this very concept about personalized medicine, and also personalizable system for testing, drug effects, such as the organoid systems and others. Maybe the very concept about having a blockbuster drug that is applied to everyone could already be disrupted. That you can kind of do fast iteration of kind of a small and narrowly targeted drugs for peculiar diseases and symptoms, and builds on a more kind of crowdsourcing or crowd kind of enabling approach. For example, ChatGPT, when it's on the market, everybody just go and try it already without even a big kind of force behind it to drive or to sell it. I think there can be a new vehicle to promote a different concept of what we call a drug, using this very unique property of AI and computing being high throughput. You can actually roll out drugs or drug hypotheses orders of magnitude faster and cheaper than the traditional pharma, and outpace them in a different game.
But by the way, I would say that I think a lot of that is actually happening in real life. because many people are experimenting, on themselves and experimenting with advice they get. It's just that we are not recording that data. I think if we recorded that data and the experimentation that people are doing and actions that people are doing on themselves, and I think one way to record that is with these large-scale cohorts observational cohorts from real life, just with also recording actions and experimentation that people do, even with drugs on themselves. We could collect that data, use that data to train models, and that would be on a scale that's much, much larger than the very small scale of clinical trial data that like Uri was saying, we don't even have that data because that data is in silos and is not being shared. So I think a lot of that is about, you could get a lot of value from just trying to collect that data and then learning from it.
And if I may piggyback on top of that, so I really like the idea of a School of Digital Public Health, because I think you'd like to take in people from a wide range of backgrounds. So I was thinking if I was given, £1 billion to make the Abu Dhabi population more active, I probably wouldn't give them some personalized fitness trackers, etc. I'd probably try and build better cycle lanes, so I think some of these societal problems also require working with people outside of technical domains as well, and for societal solutions.
So I actually love Eric's vision for accelerating and personalizing. It's a very big vision, and I must say that we also had this vision when we started in silico. So if you look at the early papers, we were looking at this fast iteration and looking at how to accelerate. And I must say that once you get into the pharmaceutical industry, it will corrupt you very quickly. I see myself right now in the mirror every day, and I'm just a different Alex from when I started. So pharma is about novelty and confidence. And this field in between is where you can walk. If you go novel, it's extremely expensive and it's long. And most of the time you will fail. Because currently the problem in drug discovery is that we understand probably 0.01% of human biology, period, right? So we can do a lot of simulation, we can do a lot of zero-shot learning, one-shot learning, we can extrapolate from one data type to another, but the complexity of human biology prevents us from going super novel. So we can go one approach, look at already established therapies and try to personalize, right? And that would be very high confidence, right? So you are trying to take something that already works and make it work better. Or you can try to find something in between. So if you want to go after the concept of actual personalized drug discovery, you would need to find the level of abstraction and also the level of balance between novelty and confidence where you can operate with reasonable capital. Because every time you go novel, like my program 1, I'm now extremely afraid of going phase 2. Trust me, it's like that's a samurai style, kamikaze, right? So if it's a binary event, that's why you need to build up your pipeline to ensure that if you fail there, you have a lot to fall onto, because otherwise your decade of your life is wasted and buried, right? And also huge shame probably. And we try to do it very fast. So I think that the ultimate level of abstraction for doing personalized drug discovery is actually not using novel chemistry, but utilizing already known molecules and molecules from the libraries with some extent of validation, so probably PK in mice at least, if you are going small molecules, and trying to personalize to a specific patient. So the lab that I demonstrated today in the video, that's exactly specifically designed for personalized drug discovery. So we get those most valuable data types, expression, so proteomics, methylation, and deep phenotyping, and then doing a panel of drugs. Each individual sample could be sampled from multiple places in the human body, and then looking at response. And I think that having systems like that in several hospitals, for example, massive hospitals, we could try to reach this level of personalized drug discovery where you can actually give the patient some drug and formulation of this drug, so it will help while they're still alive and maybe in a matter of weeks. But we need to find this optimal balance between novelty, confidence, and budget, and commercial tractability as well, because you also want to later justify why did you do it for this patient. And I think the best way to accelerate this pace is, and this change, is to try to do races. So where we can try to set, let's say, a small patient cohort, one rare disease perhaps, or a small cohort, experimental cohort of patients where we would try to do it for several, or maybe even N of 1, and then try to go all the way into clinic. And that's why we're looking for geographies to do that. So one geography that is very interesting is actually China. So there you can make preclinical races. We've demonstrated that if you use the power of China, distribute the workload to many labs, you can actually achieve very fast results. But now, if you want to go clinical and go into patients, you also need regulatory support. So somebody like FDA or NNPA needs to have a group that would be monitoring this. Maybe we can do something like that here in the UAE. I don't think it is possible, but maybe if there are decision makers that would allow us to go into human patients very quickly and just do this kind of Formula One race, benchmark it, time it, try to beat it every time.
Trying to think something technically crazy now. So what is the counterpart of a ChatGPT or GPT-3, in the biomedical space, right? So ChatGPT is a pretty unselective kind of consumer or eater of all textual data. Basically, all the written text ever produced in mankind, were used to train such a monster. And then the least it can do is to extrapolate and smooth out the holes in the middle and come up with something that is kind of pieced together from the consumed text. If we translate an equivalent into a medicine, I can imagine that it kind of assumes one can just measure everything about every patient in hospital based on whatever they eat, whatever they take, and so forth, and then without even having a purpose for that. And then just feed all this data into this gigantic machine, and then build a continuous kind of representation, maybe a submanifold, where now you have a novel point you put, chances are you will find enough neighbors that will suggest you. There's no novelty there, but it's purely powered by data. It might be an interesting project, which is not to be validated through a FDA-designed program, because it is not testable, but it is really tested by enumerations of examples or or maybe a historical account. I wonder whether there's an interest of advocating or trying that kind of ideas.
There is something like that actually in China.
Yeah, but again, it can be even bigger, because I'm talking about the entire universe of text ever produced. In here, we're talking about the entire universe of any personal signals, at all levels, molecular, social, and histological and other levels. At least some concerted effort rather than just a China or a US or certain regional kind of effort. Right? But again, this is probably a fantasy.
Well, but I think this is I mean, the cohorts we're trying to build are, in a way, this is what they are, right? They try to track people and enroll as many people as possible and measure as many variables as we can on them, without any one particular task in mind, but with the task of eventually, modeling many different processes and for many different tasks.
Yeah, maybe I can add to kind of riff on what Alex said. Is an analogy I often think about is the aerospace industry. And we know that in the aerospace industry there was a major shift in the last decade when SpaceX came into the picture, and they managed to reduce the costs of sending a kilogram of matter into space by 2 orders of magnitude. And the main difference was their much higher risk aversion compared to the older institutionalized players like NASA, because for NASA, failure is a very costly endeavor that they just want risk. And risk aversion is something that is sorely missing in clinical settings for all of the reasons that Alex mentioned. And whatever methods we can find to reduce risk aversion in some settings, and do more frequent innovation in iteration would probably advance, medical science more than anything else.
I have a question about drug discovery. So generally speaking, the industry made a shift from sort of phenotype-driven discovery to very target-centric discovery. So I wonder what is the next major shift and what is the role of AI in this shift? Just wonder.
Yeah, I can try. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I wonder about the next major shift. So as an example, we were driven by phenotype discovery in the past. Now it's a very target-centric paradigm. And I wonder what's up next. What's the major big shift in how we discover drugs?
Alex has something to say.
Well, I mean, we tried everything already, right? So the entire pharma industry is using our software in one way or another. So I think that the next big thing is actually returning back to the phenotype and incorporating multiple data types. So you would have multimodal discovery, and your decision at the target selection would be informed already with the chemistry data that you can put forward, right? So you understand the risks, the costs, and commercial tractability of if you're talking small molecules, how you're going to prosecute the target. You're going to evaluate the target market size. So is it feasible to go after this patient population and look if you can target this patient population with this target and benefit them. And I think that now we actually are thinking about how to maximize quality-adjusted life years that would be generated per dollar spent, right? So you can think this way and think about not only phenotype and gene expression and other data types that would inform your target selection, but also and not only commercial tractability and how costly it's going to be, how long it's going to take, but you can actually think about how many life years you're going to generate. So now we are trying to think about this. So how do you make a drug that generates the maximum number of quality-adjusted life years? So just think about it. If you make a drug that benefits every person, even healthy people, and adds 1 year of life to everybody's life, you just generated 8 billion life years, not talking about net present value, just today. And that could be as easy as, going for exercise, or something like metformin or acarbose, or optimizing, maybe rapamycin. How many people are taking rapamycin here? 20% increase, well, 20% increase in mice, right, in life. And I think the next big thing in drug discovery would be to look at where you generate the maximum number of life years with the adequate investment, with the adequate risk-benefit, risk-cost profile. And that decision when you start a preclinical program and drug discovery program, you might go for this maximum benefit. I think that would be a really, really cool thing to go after, and a few people are thinking about that, including us. You take all information available.
I'd love to add some personal kind of thoughts from a technical level, right? I think one of the big thing, I want to see, or I believe will be happening, is more of a very, very high, a crazily high throughput, but crazily also in vitro and in silico approach that is not involving, directly reverse engineering phenotype and do the guesswork and do the blind sifting and selection in an ocean of possibilities. These are not principled approach. These are really by chance, by luck, by some kind of experience and insight. But now with orders of magnitude more powerful computing and data and knowledge, why not go first principle? I can give you the example of what I see to be the first principle, right? But right now, first principle is very slow. Out of say, one of the bigger pharma like Pfizer, I think 2 drugs strike me to be the most kind of visible and famous. One is Viagra, which was actually discovered by accident. It's not a first principle approach. You basically go back the phenotype and see the effect, and you go back and find, oh, this is the right drug. If every drug is discovered in this way, it's very unfortunate. It's very expensive and very slow. And the other drug is the COVID vaccine, the mRNA kind of technology, which was started from principle. We know that which piece of the mRNA sequence is going to suppress which part of the antibody, and then causing what changes. And then it's about designing the right engineering protocol to produce it. And also, the production cost is very low. You can basically use a test tube to produce billions of doses of the whole thing. The cost is really on transportation, storage, and so forth, right? And but why it is very slow as well? Because the biology was very expensive to do. It's one lab basically taking 20 years to study the mechanism and so forth, and also in test tube and in the experimental system. I think many of these problems now can be done on a computer through simulation. You have, in fact, ChatGPT, models like that, the foundation models, is a big simulator. People thought it's a generator, but it's actually a simulator. You can actually simulate with very low cost all the possibilities, and then you can test the simulation using the next wave of softwares, like doing effect kind of modeling, doing kind of toxicity kind of experimentation and so forth. So I think the next big wave could be a holistic pipeline where you start from first principles, such as molecular structure, such as biological sequence, DNA sequence or protein sequences. Then you basically start predicting the structure, which is already happening in AlphaFold. You can actually reasonably well predict the structure. Now predict the structure pairs. You actually then use a in silico cell-free kind of system to produce the synthesized protein, and then you can inject them into an organoid, to mass produce or test them using the so-called patient-on-a-chip kind of technology, without even kill an animal or recruit a single patient. You actually could do that with maybe a huge majority of hypotheses without even involving the traditional drug kind of testing experiment, and then do this iteration, run another program, having more hypotheses. So I call this really a in silico and in vitro, drug pre-screening or sifting process. It was not done right now in a big way, and in fact, the big pharmas reject that kind of practice because why? They have tens of thousands of employees who didn't know how to do it. They had to keep their job. In a sense, it is something that is going against what is the common practice, but it's very, very low cost and effective. I can predict that in the next couple of decades, maybe years, this will be a unstoppable way because there are other countries, such as UAE, such as Israel, which does not have that big money to feed those big farmers, but have to also find something or do something meaningful. We actually are probably more open to try this approach and just, in a sense, flood the queue with orders of molecular hypotheses and promising drug candidates. And let's see what's happened. Do they say no to it? Or, it's successful in other places already and the big farmers will follow up. Actually, interesting seeing this dynamics down the road.
I think it's really exciting, all these developments, but it's, I think, still really important for the drug development process that we conduct then the human trials much more efficiently. I was talking about Omer's point in risk aversion, because quite often these phase 2, 3, 4 trials are incredibly expensive and really cumbersome as well. A lot of these international multi-site trials are only recruiting 2 or 3 or 4 participants per site. I think the whole system could be much more efficient than that, and that's why I think I'm excited about even the type of work there that NOAA then is doing with these electronic healthcare record systems. I think this offers an opportunity to do much more lean trials and using electronic healthcare databases for follow-up then, but still having randomization at the heart. And again, I think there's a wonderful opportunity for regions of the world then, such as this, if one creates a large-scale biobank to identify then maybe candidate genetic targets, but then also one could use it as a recruitment ground for maybe or for specific participants, and there's a follow-up mechanism as well then with the electronic healthcare record data. So I think that can be really help us much more efficiently than more quickly test all the drug targets then that will come from the approaches then that have been just mentioned.
Yeah, I can offer a perhaps more technical answer to Doron's question. So you mentioned phenotype-based discovery and target-based discovery, and I think that the hopes for target-based discovery were over-optimistic, because many of these hopes were based on the assumption that genetic sequencing would help us infer the genetic architectures of diseases. And it turned out that genetic architectures are much more complex than everybody hoped for. And I think one of the potentials for breakthroughs is if we could find intermediate, let's call it biomarkers between the genetics and the phenotypes that we don't currently have. And probably proteomics is our best candidate right now, because the hope is that by being able to efficiently measure proteins at the level of tissues or cell types, we would have this intermediate biomarker between the phenotype and the genetics that gives us accurate information, but kind of distills the complexities of the genetic architecture into the actual causal mechanisms of the diseases. And I think that could be the next major breakthrough if we could do that at scale.
Okay, so maybe on that note, we will close this panel discussion and also the workshop. Thank you very much for attending, for some of you local, some of you coming all the way here. I think we had wonderful days. Thank you for the panel, for the speakers of both days. That's it. Thank you.